freedom and productivity.
自由与生产力。
It's not fuck you energy in the sense that I think everyone should live their life that way to the greatest extent possible. Obviously, we have our requirements around work and obligations that are genuinely important to us. But don't fritter away your life on randomly scheduled things and things that aren't important, don't matter, and events and weddings and tedious dinners with tedious people that you don't want to go to.
这并不是那种去你的能量，而是我认为每个人都应该在最大程度上以这种方式生活。当然，我们确实有一些与工作和义务相关，对我们真正重要的责任，但不要把生命浪费在那些随机排定、既不重要也无关紧要的事情上，比如活动、婚礼或与你不想打交道的人共进的乏味晚餐。
To the extent you can bring freedom into your life, optimize for that. You'll actually be more productive. You won't just be happier, more free, you will be more productive, because then you can focus on what is in front of you, whatever the biggest problem of that day.
在你能够将自由带入生活的范围内，为此进行优化，你其实会变得更有生产力。你不仅会更快乐、更自由，你也会更高效，因为你可以专注于眼前最重要的问题，而不是被琐事干扰。
When I wake up in the morning, the first 4 hours are when I have the most energy, and that's when I want to solve all the hard problems. And the next 4 hours are when I kind of want to do some more outdoorsy activities, or I want to work out, or maybe I can have some meetings. But I'll try to do those last second based on whatever the day's priorities demand. The last 4 hours I kind of want to wind down, I want to hang out with the kids, and I want to play games, or read a book or something like that.
当我早晨醒来时，前4个小时是我精力最充沛的时段，也是我想解决最困难问题的时候。接下来的4个小时，我会选择做一些户外活动、运动或者开会，但这些通常都是根据当天的优先事项临时决定的。最后4个小时则是放松的时间，我会想陪孩子、玩游戏或读书。
So, having that flexibility and freedom is really important, so you can just put whatever is most needed into the slot at that moment. Instead, if I have like a meeting at 2 p.m. and then I have to get a thing and some emails done, I put that off till 6 p.m. and I'm rushing. I'm not going to be productive.
所以，拥有这种弹性和自由真的很重要。你可以在那一刻把最需要做的事情放进去。相反的，如果我下午2点有个会议，然后还要处理一些事情和邮件，我会把它们拖到6点再赶工，这样效率会很低。
You're certainly not free.
你当然不自由。
I'm definitely not free. But also another thing that I really believe is that inspiration is perishable. Act on it immediately. So when you're inspired to do something, do that thing. If I'm inspired to write a blog post, I want to do it at that moment. If I'm inspired to send a tweet, I want to do it that moment. If I'm inspired to solve a problem, I want it that moment. If I'm inspired to read a book, I want to read it right then.
我当然不自由，但我真正相信的一点是灵感是一时的，必须立刻行动。所以当你有灵感去做某件事时，就立刻去做。如果我有写博客的灵感，我想当下就写；如果我想发推文，我想立刻就发；如果我想解决一个问题，我希望立刻就做；如果我想读一本书，我想当下就读。
If I want to learn something, do it at the moment of curiosity. The moment the curiosity arrives, I go learn that thing immediately. I download the book. I get on Google. I get on ChatGPT. Whatever. I will figure that thing out on the spot. And that's when the learning happens. It doesn't happen because I've scheduled time, because I've set an hour aside, because when that time arrives I might be in a different mood. I might just want to do something different.
如果我想学习某件事，就要在好奇心出现的那一刻立刻行动。我会下载书，上 Google， 用 ChatGPT， 随时马上去弄懂。这才是真正的学习。学习不是因为我在日程上预留了1个小时，因为等到那个时间到了，我的心情可能已经不同，甚至想做别的事情。
So I think that spontaneity is really important. You're going to learn best when you're having fun, when you genuinely are enjoying the process. not when you're forced to sit there and do it. How much do you remember from school? You know you were forced to learn geography, history, mathematics on this schedule at this time according to this person. Didn't happen. All the stuff that sticks with you is what you learned when you wanted to, when you genuinely had the desire. And that freedom, that ability to act on something the moment you want to is so liberating that most of us go through our lives with very little tastes of that. If you live your entire life that way, that is a recipe for happiness.
所以我认为自发性非常重要。当你感到快乐，真心享受过程时，学习效果才最好，而不是被迫坐在那里学。你还记得多少学校教的东西？我们被迫按照时间表去学地理、历史、数学，结果几乎没留下印象。真正留在你脑中的，都是你自己想学、真正有渴望实学的东西。这种自由、随时行动的能力，让人非常解放。但大多数人一生中很少能真正体验。如果你一辈子都能以这种方式生活，那就是幸福的秘诀。
It feels like efficiency that you have.
感觉这样反而更有效率。
Efficient also. You have the inspiration that is going to be the most frictionless time to ever do that particular task.
没错，也更有效率，因为当你有灵感时，就是做这件事最顺畅的时刻。
So I've had the inspiration to do that. I'll put that off until a time when I no longer really want to do it quite so much. And while I do want to do that thing, I'll do something else that I needed to do because it's on the schedule. It does not work.
如果我有灵感要做某件事，但却把它拖到我不再有那么强烈欲望时才去做，结果往往不理想。而当我真的想做那件事时，我却去做日程上安排的其他事，这样根本行不通。
Procrastination is because you don't want to do that thing right now. You want to do something else. Go do that something else. I reject this frame that efficiency and productivity and success are counter to happiness and freedom. They actually go together.
拖延是因为你当下并不想做那件事，而是想做别的，那就去做别的。我拒绝那种认为效率、生产力和成功与幸福、自由对立的观点。事实上，它们是相辅相成的。
The happier you are, the more you can sustain doing something. The more likely you're going to do something that will in turn make you even happier, and you'll continue to do it, and you'll outwork everybody else. The more free you are, the better you can allocate your time, and the less you're caught up in a web of obligations and commitments, and the more you can focus on the task at hand.
你越快乐，就越能持续去做某件事，也越有可能做一些让你更快乐的事，并且持续下去，最终超越其他人。你越自由，就越能合理分配时间，越不会被义务和承诺的网络困住，也越能专注于当下的任务。
Finding your authentic work.
寻找属于你的真实工作。
This is related to another insight of yours. The less you want something, the less you're thinking about it, the less you're obsessing over it, the more you're going to do it in a natural way. The more you're going to do it for yourself, you're going to do it in a way that you're good at, and you're going to stick with it. The people around you will see the quality of your work is higher. But this seems like a difficult tension to navigate because an obsessive attention to detail is a competitive advantage of your work as well. So you have these two things sort of conflicting with each other.
这与你的另一个观点相关。你越不渴望某件事，越不去想它，越不执着，你就会以更自然的方式去做。你会为自己去做，以你擅长的方式去做，并且持之以恒。身边的人会看到你工作的品质更高，但这似乎是一个难以平衡的张力，因为对细节的执着也是一种竞争优势，于是这两者看似彼此矛盾。
No one is gonna beat you at being you. Find what feels like play to you, but looks like work to others. So it looks like work to them, but to you it feels like play. It's not work. So you're gonna outcompete them because you're doing it effortlessly. You're doing it for fun. They are doing it for work. They are doing it for some byproduct.
To you, it's art, it's beauty, it's joy, it's flow, it's fulfilling. 没有人能在成为你自己这件事上胜过你。找到那些对你来说像游戏，但在别人眼里却像工作的事情。对别人是工作，对你却是娱乐，因为你是毫不费力的在做，因为快乐而去做，而他们是为了工作或其他附带利益而做。对你来说，那是一种艺术、美，一种喜悦，一种心流，一种成就感。
You must enjoy podcasting. If you didn't, you wouldn't be good at it. You wouldn't have 900 episodes either. If you decided that the right way to get ahead in life was to go write books, nobody would have heard of you. Chris Williamson's book would be a complete flop. That's not who you are. You're a podcaster. You enjoy talking to people. You enjoy interviewing them.
你一定很享受做播客，否则你不会做得这么好，也不可能录到900集。如果你认为人生的正确道路是去写书，那就没有人听过你了。克里斯·威廉姆森的书会完全失败，因为那不是你。你是个播客主持人，你喜欢与人交谈，喜欢采访他们。
The more you do things that are natural to you, the less competition you have. You escape competition through authenticity by being your own self.
你越多去做对自己自然的事情，就越少竞争。你透过真实做自己来逃离竞争。
Productize yourself.
让自己成为产品。
If I had to summarize how to be successful in life in 2 words, I would just say productize yourself. That's it. Just figure out what it is that you naturally do that the world might want that you can scale up and turn into a product, and it'll eventually be effortless for you. Yes, there's always work required, but it won't even feel like work to you, it'll feel like play to you, and modern society gives us that opportunity.
如果要用2个词来总结如何成功生活，我会说把自己产品化，就是这样，弄清楚你天生会做什么，而这个世界又正好需要什么，然后把它放大，变成一个产品，这最终对你来说会毫不费力。是的，总需要付出努力，但这不会让你感觉是在工作，而是像在玩乐，而现代社会正好给了我们这样的机会。
No. If you were 2,000 years ago, you're born on a farm. Your choices are very limited, right? You're going to do stuff on that farm. Now you can literally wake up and you can move to a different city. You can switch careers. You can switch jobs. You can change the people that you're with. You know you can change so many things about who you are and who you're with and what you're doing that there is infinite opportunity out there for you. Literally infinite.
要知道，如果你出生在2000年前的农场，你的选择非常有限。你只能在农场干活，但现在你真的可以一觉醒来，搬到另一个城市，转换职业，更换工作，改变身边的人。你能改变太多关于自己，关于与谁相处，关于在做什么的事情。外面有无限的机会，真的是无限的。
So it's much better to treat this like a search function to find the people who need you the most, to find the work that needs you the most, to find the place you're best suited to be at. And it's worthwhile to spend time in that exploration before diving into exploitation. The biggest mistake in a world with so many choices is premature commitment. If you prematurely commit to being a lawyer or a doctor and now you've got like 5 years invested into that, you might have just completely missed. You might just end up in the wrong profession, wrong place, the wrong people for 30 years of your life grinding away, and yes, the best time to figure that out was before, but the second best time is now, so just change it.
所以，最好把这看作是一个搜寻功能，用来找到最需要你的人，找到最需要你的工作，找到你最适合的地方。在投入之前花时间探索是值得的。在这个选择如此众多的世界里，最大的错误就是过早承诺。如果你过早承诺自己要当律师或医生，并且已经投入了5年的时间，那么你可能已经完全错过，最后可能在错误的职业、错误的地方、错误的人身边度过30年的辛苦人生。没错，最好的发现时机是过去，但第二好的时机就是现在，所以就改变吧。
Say no by default.
预设说不。
And also presumably kill things that aren't working very quickly. By default, you should kill everything, you know. If you can't decide, the answer is no. And most things you just be saying no to. Part of my keeping my calendar free is just by default saying no to everything. Do I want to create a calendar just to add your event, right, or to add your need or your desire?
同样的，你应该很快地砍掉那些行不通的事情。预设情况下，你应该否决一切。如果拿不定主意，答案就是不，而大部分事情都应该说不。我保持行程表清爽的一部分原因，就是预设拒绝一切。难道我想为了加上你的活动、你的需求、你的愿望， 而特地创建一个日历吗？
One of the other things about no, early on in life you're looking for opportunities, so you're saying yes to everything, and that is a phase that you go through. That is the exploration phase. Later when you found the thing you want to work on, you're in the exploitation phase. You have to say no to everything by default, and if you don't say no to everything by default, if you have to even explicitly go out of your way to say no to something, that will take up time.
在生命的早期阶段，你会寻找机会，所以你对一切都说好，那是探索期。后来当你找到想投入的事物，你进入了利用期，这时你必须预设拒绝一切。如果你不能做到预设说不，还要特地去拒绝某件事，那就会占用你的时间。
For example, know there are a lot of people out there who are into hustle culture, and a big piece of hustle culture is like, well, you're not going to get something if you don't ask for it, so they'll hustle people. They'll always be sending you requests, messages. This is a famous person problem, but I have it. And people are always asking me for things, and I kind of squirm when I get these messages. And I'm sure you get these too: text messages, emails saying, hey Chris, my friend so and so should really be on your podcast, or you should come to my event. You should write a foreword for my book. And you kind of squirm when you get this right, and you have to figure out how to say no.
举个例子，有很多人崇尚拼命文化，其中很大一部分就是如果你不去争取，就得不到，所以他们到处发请求、发讯息，这是名人常见的困扰。但我也遇到过，人们总是不断向我提出要求，我看到这些讯息时会觉得不自在。我敢说你也会收到类似的简讯或电子邮件。Hey Chris， 我朋友某某应该上你的播客，你应该来参加我的活动，你应该帮我的书写序。收到这些讯息时，你也会感到别扭，你必须学会如何说不。
One of the things I learned along the way is that if you wouldn't ask somebody else to do it and then you get that request yourself, can just dismiss it. You don't have to respond. You don't even let it enter your brain. You have to be able to delete emails and text messages without flinching if you want to scale, and scaling is very important. Scaling your time is really important. Every interruption will take you out of flow. So the only way you can remain in flow is if you get either very good at ignoring these things by default or closing yourself off like a hermit like our mutual friend Tim Ferriss does. Or you just become emotionally capable of not registering these as something that causes turbulence inside of you.
我一路学到的一点是，如果这件事你自己都不会去麻烦别人做，那么当别人提出这样的请求时，你就可以直接无视，不必回复，甚至不必放在脑子里。如果你想扩展，你必须做到毫不犹豫地删掉这些邮件和讯息。扩展非常重要，扩展你的时间尤其重要。每一次打断都会让你脱离心流，保持心流的唯一方式，就是要么预设无视这些干扰，要么像我们的朋友 Tim Ferriss 那样把自己关起来，或者你能在情感上做到完全不把这些干扰视为会动摇你的东西。
That not registering it emotionally thing, is that fundamental? That's so fundamental to so many things in life. Can we dig into that a little bit? Is it because again, I've only seen you as you, right? I didn't know you 20 years ago. I didn't know you as a child. So I've only seen you with this holistic selfishness. The integrated self-prioritization, whatever way, don't know what we called it.
那么，在情感上不去理会它，这点是否很根本？这对人生中许多事情来说都很根本。我们能不能深入探讨一下？因为我只看到现在的你，我不知道20年前的你，不知道你小时候是什么样子，所以我只看到你这种完整的自我优先，一种整合的自私。不管我们叫它什么。
Selfish is fine. I'll take selfish. I'm selfish. I'm a very selfish person. Don't contact me.
自私没关系，我接受自私，我就是一个非常自私的人，别联系我。
That emotional reaction, whatever that is. Also get the sense too that maybe people have lived obligation life for so long that they actually kinda struggle to tap into what it is that they want. They've hidden their wants and their desires and their needs. They deprioritize themselves so much for so long. They go, what do I want? Actually, what is it? Do I want to go to this thing or not? Because all I've done is be puppeted, right? I've been marioneted by other people's desires for so long. I can't even tap into that anymore, and saying no feels like a war crime.
至于那种情感反应，不管是什么，我也感觉很多人因为太久过着责任驱动的人生，以至于难以触及自己真正的渴望。他们把自己的需求和欲望隐藏太久，长期把自己排在次要位置。他们会问：我真正想要的是什么？我到底想不想去参加这件事？因为他们一直被别人的欲望操纵着，长久以来像个木偶，被别人的线牵着走。他们甚至无法再触及自己的内心，而说不对他们来说就像犯了战争罪。
Observe your thoughts objectively.
客观地观察你的想法。
So I think it's really good to be able to view your own mind and your own thoughts objectively, and that is the big benefit of meditation. It creates a small gap between your conscious observation self and your mind, and that lets you then look at your thoughts and evaluate them a little bit like you would a third party's statements.
我认为能够客观地看待自己的头脑和想法非常重要，这也是冥想最大的好处。它能在你有意识地观察自我和思维之间创造一个小小的间隙，让你得以像审视第三者的言论一样去审视和评估自己的想法。
If you just take your mind to be you and they are integrated in one and the same at all times, and you're reacting from the mind, then you're not even going to question things that come into your mind. Anything that comes in that creates your reaction will immediately create a reaction. But if you can observe your thoughts a little bit and not in some woo-woo way, but you can even just do it through therapy, can do it through journaling. You can do it any way you'd like. You can just take long walks, don't have to meditate and do lotus position. All that is unnecessary.
如果你总是把头脑等同于自己，并且总是与它完全融合，直接做出反应，那么你甚至不会去质疑进入脑海的东西，任何触发反应的东西都会立即引发反应。但如果你能稍微观察一下自己的想法，就算不是什么玄乎的方法，也可以透过心理治疗、写日记，或是任何你喜欢的方式去做到，比如散步，不一定要打坐或盘腿冥想，那些都不是必要的。
But if you can observe your own thoughts and view them a little objectively, then you can start being a little more choosy, a little more critical, and you can realize that there are no problems in the real world other than maybe things that inflict pain on your body. Everything else has to become a problem in your mind first. You have to view it and interpret it and create a narrative that it is a problem before it becomes the problem.
但是如果你能客观地观察自己的思绪，就能开始更有选择性，更具批判性，并且意识到在真实世界里，其实除了对身体造成痛苦的东西，没有真正的问题，其他一切都必须先在你的脑中成为问题。你要先去看待它，解释它，并编织成一个这是一个问题的叙事，它才会成为问题。
Then you realize that a lot of your emotional energy is spent on reacting to things that your mind is automatically saying are problems, and you don't need all those problems. Do you really need that many problems in your life? Again, I would say try to focus on just one overarching problem and then go solve that problem.
接着你会发现，自己的大量情绪能量都浪费在回应那些头脑自动标记为问题的东西上，但其实你根本不需要那么多问题。你的人生真的需要那么多麻烦吗？我会再强调一次，试着把注意力集中在一个最重要的核心问题上，然后去解决它。
It's like if you want to be successful, define success very concretely, focus on that and everything else. When it enters your mind, it becomes a problem. Whether it's a judgment about the girl walking down the street or the car that just cut in front of you, or whether it's like you know this. Your accountant did this stupid thing. Like, yes, it's going to trigger you, but observe for a moment that like it's triggering me. I've created a problem. Do I really want to have this problem right now? Do I want to spend the energy on this problem, or do I want that going somewhere else?
这就像如果你想要成功，就要具体的定义成功，然后专注于那件事，其他一切当它进入你的脑海时，就会变成一个问题。不管是对路过女孩的评判，被插队的汽车，还是会计做了蠢事，这些都会触发你。但你应该先观察一下啊，它触发了我创造了一个问题，我真的现在需要这个问题吗？我要把精力花在这上面，还是该用在别的地方？
And it doesn't have to be that over. You don't have to. The mind mud wrestling with itself is also a problem.
而且事情不必演变到那种程度，头脑和自己摔跤本身也是一种问题。
My problems have got problems, and I have a real problem about fixing my problems.
我也会这样，我的问题里还套着问题，而我又有一个解决问题的问题。
Yeah, exactly, and so you're going to be much happier and much more focused. Again, I think happiness and focus and success can kind of complement each other. You're going to have much more energy. Just think about it as mental energy. You'll have much more mental energy to focus on the actual problems you want to solve if you don't start unconsciously, subconsciously, reactively picking up problems everywhere. So before anything can be a problem that takes up your emotional energy, you have to accept it as a problem. You can be choosy about your problems. And I'm not saying I'm perfect in that regard, but I think I'm better than I used to be.
没错，正是如此，所以你会更快乐，更专注。我认为快乐、专注与成功是互补的。当你不再无意识、潜意识、反射性的到处捡问题时，你会有更多能量、心理能量，专注于真正想解决的问题。在任何事情成为消耗你情绪能量的问题之前，你必须先接受它作为问题，而这是可以选择的。我不是说自己在这方面完美，但我确实比以前更好了。
Choose your problems wisely.
明智地选择你的问题。
Well, lots of people are addicted to solving problems, right? So much so that sometimes people create problems when we don't have any, simply so that we can solve them. We have that going on, and then even worse is we take on problems that we can't affect.
很多人其实沉迷于解决问题，甚至到了有时候我们没有问题，他们也会创造问题，只为了能解决。而更糟的是，我们还会承担那些自己根本无法影响的问题。
So, another one of my little quips was, a rational person can sort of find peace by cultivating indifference to things that are out of their control. And I'm as guilty as anybody of doomsifying on X or social media and getting worked up about things that I can't do anything about, right? Like, do I want to be fighting those battles in my mind when I literally cannot do anything about it?
我常开的一个玩笑是，一个理性的人能通过培养对不可控事物的冷漠来找到平静，而我自己和其他人一样，也曾在 X 或社交媒体上 doomscrolling， 为那些我无能为力的事感到焦虑。当我真的什么也做不了时，我还要在脑海里跟这些问题战斗吗？
So if you find yourself looping on a problem like you're watching the news too much and you're getting caught up in a problem you can't do anything about, you have to step away from that. And modern media is a delivery mechanism for memetic viruses. And what's happened now is 100 years ago, 500 years ago, if something wasn't happening in your immediate vicinity, you wouldn't hear about it. It wouldn't be a problem for you. But now every single one of the world's problems has turned into a memetic virus, which is going into the battlefield of the news and is trying to infect your mind in real time.
Hyperspeed。所以，如果你发现自己在某个问题上不断打转，比如过度看新闻，结果陷进了一个你无能为力的问题，那就该抽身。现代媒体就是魔音病毒的传播机制。以前100年、500年前，如果某件事不发生在你周围，你根本不会听说，它对你就不是问题。但现在世界上的每一个问题都变成了一种魔音病毒，在新闻战场上实施传播，试图以极快的速度感染你的思维。
So that you become obsessed with the war in Ukraine is really far away, or you get obsessed with climate change, or you get obsessed with the doom, or you get obsessed with whatever. And there's nothing as riveting as the old religion, the world is ending, the world is ending, pay attention, the world is ending.
所以，你可能会沉迷于乌克兰战争，其实离你很远，沉迷于气候变迁，沉迷于灾难，或是其他什么，这些就像古老的宗教咒语一样令人着迷。世界末日来了，世界末日来了，注意，世界末日来了。
Cassandra complex at global scale.
全球规模的卡珊德拉情节。
Cassandra complex at global scale, and I would argue that large percentages of population are essentially just infected with these mimetic viruses that have taken over their brain and are causing them to do incredible gyration about things that probably aren't even true or are greatly exaggerated, but even to the extent they are true, are things that that person can do nothing about and they should put their own house in order first.
全球规模的卡珊德拉情节，我认为世界上相当大比例的人口基本上已经被这些魔音病毒感染，他们接管了人们的大脑，让他们为那些可能根本不是真的或被严重夸大的事情而剧烈反应，但即便其中有些是真的，也依然是他们无能为力的事。他们首先应该把自己眼前的生活打理好。
So you know another little line I have for myself is your family is broken but you're going to fix the world, right? People are running out there to try and fix the world and their own lives are oh my god.
你知道吗？我给自己的一句小提醒是，你自己的家庭都乱七八糟，却还想去修复这个世界。很多人拼命往外跑，想要拯救世界，但自己的生活却是一团糟。
Right, and I think it defies credibility if you can't fix your own life first. I'm not going to take you seriously if you can't fix your own life, like all these philosophers who you know seem like people you emulate and so smart, or like these brilliant celebrities and they go off and commit suicide. Well, you just kind of invalidated your whole way of life. It's like that line of In No Country for Old Men where the killer is waiting for the protagonist and protagonist shows up and the killer says, well, you know, if your set of rules brought you here, then what good are your rules? Didn't work.
没错，我认为如果你连自己的人生都处理不好，就根本不值得被认真看待。如果你无法修复自己的生活，我不会把你当一回事。就像那些哲学家，看似值得效仿又聪明，或那些光鲜亮丽的名人，最后却自杀了，那么你整套人生哲学就被彻底推翻了。这让我想起《显露物境》中的一句台词：杀手等着主角，主角出现时，杀手说，如果你的规则把你带到这里，那这些规则还有什么用？显然没用。
I am self. I'm holistically selfish in that I want to be objectively successful in everything I set out to want.
我是自我中心的，我的自私是全方位的，因为我希望自己在所有下定决心去追求的事情上都能客观的成功。Don't settle for mediocrity. 不要安于平庸。
Yeah, and you have one life. Don't settle for mediocrity. Don't settle for mediocrity. And I think the only, people debate intelligence, for example, right? We talk about IQ tests and all that. But I think the only true test of intelligence is if you get what you want out of life. And there are two parts to that.
是的，你只有一生，不要安于平庸。人们总是争论智力，比如 IQ 测验之类的。但我认为智力的唯一真正考验是，你能否从人生中得到你想要的东西。而这包含两个部分。
One is getting what you want, so you know how to get it, and the second is wanting the right things, knowing what to want in the first place. I could want to be a, 6'8" basketball player, and I'm not going to get that, so it's wanting the wrong thing.
第一是得到你想要的，也就是你懂得如何获取；第二是想要正确的东西，也就是一开始就知道该想要什么。我可能想成为一个身高6尺8寸的篮球员，但这不可能，所以那是想错了东西。
That's wanting something that you can't get.
那就是追求你得不到的东西。
That's wanting something you can't get. There's also wanting something that you don't want.
是的，那是得不到的东西。还有一种情况是追求你其实并不想要的东西。
Yeah, wanting something that's a booby prize.
对，追求的是个饥乐奖品。
There are plenty of booby prizes out there too, right? I don't know if that one, don't know if one in about 20 or so. Yeah, prizes that are just not worth having, or that create their own problems. But if you're not careful, you can end up in a place in life not only that you don't want to be, but one that you didn't even mean to get to.
外面有很多饥乐奖品，对吧？那些不值得拥有的东西，甚至会带来更多问题。如果你不小心，你的人生可能不仅会落在你不想去的地方，还会落在你根本没打算要去的地方。
Navigating life's decisions.
驾驭人生抉择。
That's if you're kind of proceeding unconsciously, And usually I think people end up there because they are going on autopilot with sort of societal expectations or other people's expectations, or out of guilt or out of mimetic desire. Peter Thiel has this whole thing from René Girard about how mimetic desires are desires picked up from other people, and some of those are automatically baked into society, like go to law school, go to med school, go to business school. Or they might be from watching what your friends are doing and what the other monkeys are doing, or it might be what your parents' expectations are.
这通常发生在你无意识的前进时。我认为人们会这样，是因为自动驾驶般的活在社会期待、他人期待、罪恶感或模仿欲望之下。彼得·蒂尔引用雷内·吉拉尔的观点：模仿欲望是从别人身上学来的，有些是社会自带的，比如去法学院、医学院、商学院；有些是看朋友或其他猴子在做什么，有些则来自父母的期待。
Guilt is just society's voice speaking in your head, socially programmed so you'll be a good little monkey and do things that are good for the tribe. But I think the best outcomes come when you think it through for yourself and decide for yourself, and I don't think people spend enough time deciding.
罪恶感只是社会在你脑中说话，是社会编程让你成为一个好猴子，为部落做对他有利的事。但我认为最好的结果来自你自己思考、自己决定，而人们往往在决定上花的时间太少。
For example, we run on these 4-year cycles. In Silicon Valley, you go join a startup, you vest your stock over 4 years. That's the standard. In college, you go for 4 years. High school, you go for 4 years. Some things take longer. You have children, they hit puberty 9 years later. That's like a 9-year cycle until that relationship changes. But we're used to these fairly long cycles, multi-year cycles, in which we are committed to things. You go to law school, 4 or 5-year cycle. You go be a lawyer, 40-year cycle.
举例来说，我们习惯4年周期，在矽谷，你加入一间初创公司，股票4年才归属，这是标准。在大学读4年，高中也是4年，有些更长。比如你有孩子，9年后进入青春期，关系改变，这些都是多年期的承诺。去法学院是4到5年周期，当律师可能就是40年的周期。
These are very long cycles. The amount of time we spend deciding what to do and who to do it with is very short, very, very short. We spend 3 months deciding, 1 month deciding on a job where we're going to be for 10 years or 5 years. And because a lot of discovery is path dependent, where the next thing you find on the path is dependent on where you were on the previous path, you sort of start going down this vector that is a very long distance.
这些周期很长，但我们在做什么，和谁一起做上的决策时间却很短，非常非常短。我们可能只花3个月甚至1个月决定一份会做10年的工作，而且很多发现都是路径依赖的。你下一个会遇到的东西取决于你之前走的路，于是你就开始沿着一个很长的向量前进。
People decide frivolously which city to live in, and that's going to decide who their friends are, what their jobs are, their opportunity, their weather, their food supply, their air supply, quality of life. It's such an important decision, but people spend so little time thinking it through. I would argue that if you're making a 4-year decision, spend a year thinking it through, like really thinking it through, 25% of the time.
人们往往草率地决定要住在哪座城市，但这将决定你的朋友、工作、机会、天气、食物来源、空气品质与生活质量。这么重要的决定，人们却花很少时间思考。我会说，如果你要做一个4年的决策，那至少要花1年来仔细思考，也就是1/4的时间。
Exactly. There's the secretary theorem. Don't know if you know that one?
对，这里有一个秘书定理，你知道吗？
Is that after you've done this many people, pick the best one of the next however many? That's right. Yeah.
是不是指当你面试了某个数量的人之后，就在接下来的人当中挑出最好的那个？没错，就是这样。
The secretary theorem is this computer science professor trying to figure out how much time he should spend interviewing secretaries and then how long to keep the secretary. So, let's say he's going to have a secretary for 10 years. Does he keep searching for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 1 month, 2 months? What is the optimal time?
秘书定理来自一位计算机科学教授，他想弄清楚自己应该花多少时间来面试秘书，以及要多久才决定聘用。假设他打算留这位秘书10年，那么是该找1年、2年、3年，还是1个月、2个月？最佳的时间点是多少？
And it turns out that the optimal time is somewhere around a third. About a third of the way through. You take the best person you've worked with and try to find someone that good or better. So by the time you've gone about a third of the way through, you have seen enough that you now have a sense of what the bar is. And then anybody who meets or exceeds that bar is good enough. This applies to dating. This applies to jobs and careers. This applies generally.
结果发现最佳时间点大约是在1/3处。当你走过1/3的过程时，你会挑出至今遇到的最佳人选，并尝试找到与之同等或更好的人。此时你已经看过足够多的样本，对标准有了感觉。之后只要有人达到或超过这个标准就可以了。这定理适用于约会、工作、职业选择，甚至普遍的人生决策。
But the interesting thing about the secretary theorem is that it's actually not time-based. It's not based on 1/3 of the time, it's iteration-based.
不过秘书定理有趣的地方在于，它其实不是基于时间的1/3，而是基于迭代次数。
The number of candidates, the number of shots you took on goal.
候选人的数量，也就是你尝试的次数。
That's right. So, you want to have lots and lots of iterations.
没错，因此你需要大量的尝试。
So in that sense you need to bail out quickly, and you need to be decisive quickly.
所以从这个角度来看，你必须快速抽身，也要快速果断。
That's right. You need to take opportunities quickly, and bail out quickly.
没错，你需要快速把握机会，也要快速放弃不合适的。
Like, if you go back and you look through failed relationships, probably the biggest regret will be staying in the relationship after your year was over.
就像回头看那些失败的感情，最大的遗憾往往是明知道结束了，却还留在关系里。
Exactly. You should have left sooner. The moment you knew it wasn't going to work out, you should have moved on.
没错，你本该更早离开。当你知道不会有结果时，就应该及时抽身。
Iterations versus repetitions.
迭代 vs 重复。
So in that sense, I think Malcolm Gladwell popularized this idea of 10,000 hours to mastery. I would say it's actually 10,000 iterations to mastery.
所以从这个角度来看，我认为马尔科姆·格拉德威尔普及的10000小时定律应该改为10000次迭代才对。
It's not actually 10,000, it's some unknown number, but it's about the number of iterations that drive the learning curve, and iteration is not repetition. Repetition is a different thing. Repeating is doing the same thing over and over. Iteration is modifying it with learning and then doing another version of it. So that's error correction. So if you get 10,000 error corrections in anything, you will be an expert at it.
其实不是确切的10000次，而是一个未知数。但重点在于迭代次数推动学习曲线，而迭代不是重复，重复是一次又一次做同样的事，迭代则是基于学习做出修改，再做新的版本，这就是纠错。如果你在任何领域进行了10000次纠错，你就会成为该领域的专家。
Overcoming cynicism and pessimism.
克服犬儒与悲观。
Don't partner with cynics and pessimists. You mentioned there about the people who've got a nightmare going on at home and are trying to fix the world. But a lot of the time that cynicism and pessimism we find in ourselves. We see the world whether it's because we've imbibed what the news or the negative people around us have said, or it's a bit more endogenous than that. It's just sort of in us. It's the way that we see the world. How can people avoid cynicism and pessimism within themselves?
不要与犬儒主义者或悲观主义者为伍。你提到那些家里一团乱却还想拯救世界的人，但很多时候，我们在自己身上也能找到这种犬儒和悲观。我们之所以这样看世界，有时是因为接受了新闻或身边负面人的影响，有时则是内在的，它就是存在于我们心中，是我们看世界的方式。那么人该如何避免自身的犬儒和悲观呢？
Cynicism and pessimism is a tough one. We're naturally hardwired for it. Again, I go back to evolution. I'm sorry to keep harping on evolution, but within biology there's very few good explanatory theories, and theory of evolution by natural selection is probably the best one. So if you can't explain something about life or psychology or human nature through evolution, then you probably don't have a good theory for it.
犬儒和悲观是个难题，我们天生就被设定成这样。我又得回到进化论，很抱歉老师提，但在生物学里很少有好的解释理论，而自然选择的进化论大概是最好的。如果你不能用进化来解释生命、心理或人性的一些现象，那么你的理论大概就不够好。
I would say that pessimism is another one that comes out of this, which is in the natural environment. You're hardwired to be pessimistic because let's say that I see something rustling in the woods. If I move towards it and it turns out to be food and prey, then good. I get to eat one meal. But if it turns out to be a predator, I get eaten, and that's the end of that. So we are hardwired to avoid ruin and just dying, so we are naturally hardwired to be pessimists.
我会说，悲观正是这样来的，在自然环境中，你天生会偏向悲观，比如你看到树林里有动静，如果靠近发现是猎物，那你有一餐吃，但如果是捕食者，你就被吃掉，结束了。所以我们天生被设定为要避免毁灭和死亡，因此也天生倾向于悲观。
But modern society is very different. Despite whatever problems you may have with modern society, it is far, far safer than living in the jungle and just trying to survive, and the opportunities and the upside are non-linear.
但现代社会非常不同，无论你对它有什么抱怨，它都比丛林求生安全得多，机会和上行回报也呈现非线性。
For example, when you're investing, if you short a stock, the most money you can make is 2x. If the stock goes to zero, you double your money. But if the stock is the next Nvidia and it goes 100x or 1000x, you make a lot of money. So upside through leverage is nearly unlimited.
举例来说，当你投资时，如果放空一只股票，最多赚2倍股价归零，你的钱翻倍。但如果那只股票是下一个英伟达，上涨100倍或1000倍，你会赚很多。透过杠杆，上行几乎是无限的。
Also in modern society, because there's so many different people you can interact with, if you go on a date and it fails, there are infinite more people to go on a date with. In a tribal system there might have been 20 people, and you can't even get through all of them. So modern society is far more forgiving of failure, and you just have to neocortically realize and override that. You have to realize that you're much more running a search function to find the thing that'll work, and then that one thing will pay off in massive compounding.
在现代社会，你能接触的人数极多。如果你一次约会失败，还有无数的人可以再约。在部落体系里，可能只有20个人，你根本接触不完。所以现代社会对失败宽容得多。你必须用新皮层去意识并复写这一点。你要明白自己其实是在执行一个搜寻函数。去找到真正合适的那一个，然后那个会带来巨大的复利回报。
Once you find your mate for the rest of your life, you find your wife or your husband, then you can compound in that relationship. It's okay if you had 50 failed dates in between. The same way, once you find the one business you're meant to plow into and it'll compound returns, it's okay if you had 50 small failed ventures or 50 small failed job interviews. The number of failures doesn't matter, and so there's no point in being a pessimist.
一旦你找到一生的伴侣，你的妻子或丈夫，那么你就可以在这段关系中积累复利。之前有50次失败的约会也没关系。同样的，当你找到适合全力投入的事业，它能带来复利回报，那么之前50次小失败的创业或面试也不重要，失败的次数根本不重要。所以做一个悲观主义者毫无意义。
I would say you want to be skeptical about specific things. Every specific opportunity is probably a fail, but you want to be optimistic in the general.
我会说，你应该对具体的事物保持怀疑，因为每一个具体的机会都很可能失败，但总体上要保持乐观。
How do you navigate that tension?
那要怎么在这种张力中前进？
I mean exactly as I said. I'm optimistic in the general that if something fails right now, then this is a little woo-woo, but it wasn't meant to be. It was a learning experience. It was an iteration. As long as I learned something from it, then it's a win. If I didn't learn from it, then it's a loss. But as long as you're learning, and you keep iterating fast and cutting your losses quickly, then when you find the right thing, you have to be optimistic and compound into it.
正如我刚才所说，总体上我是乐观的。如果某件事现在失败了，那就不是注定的，它只是一段学习经历，一次迭代。只要我从中学到了东西，那就是成功。如果什么也没学到，那才是失败。但只要你在学习，快速迭代，及时止损。当你找到真正的东西时，就必须保持乐观，并持续投入，让它复利增长。
So you don't want to jump into the first thing. You don't want to marry the first person you date necessarily unless you got very lucky. But you want to investigate and explore very, very quickly until you find the match. And then you have to be willing to go all in. You have to be willing to move your chips to the center of the table. So both those approaches are required.
所以你不该一开始就盲目投入，比如不必然要娶第一个约会对象，除非你非常幸运，但你要非常快速的探索和调查，直到找到合适的那个，然后你必须愿意全力以赴，把所有筹码推到桌子中央。这两种方法都必须结合。
Beyond labels and identity.
超越标签与身份。
It's a barbell strategy. It's sort of black or white, and most people are sort of stuck in this gray bit, like I'm half in, but I kind of don't really know if I am.
这是一种杠铃策略，要么黑要么白，而大多数人被困在中间的灰色地带，比如我好像有投入，但又不确定自己是不是真的投入。
Also think like labels like pessimists, optimists, cynic, introvert, extrovert. These are very self-limiting. Humans are very dynamic. There are times when you feel like being introverted. There are times when you feel like being extroverted. There are contexts in which you'll be pessimistic, are contexts in which you'll be optimistic.
再比如那些标签，悲观主义者、乐观主义者，犬儒、内向、外向，这些都是很限制自我的东西。人类其实非常动态，有时你会觉得内向，有时你会想要外向，有些情境让你悲观，有些情境让你乐观。
Leave all those labels alone. It's better just to look at the problem at hand, look at reality the way it is, try to take yourself out of the equation in a sense. Like obviously you're involved, but motivated reasoning is the worst kind of reasoning. You're not going to find truth through highly motivated reasoning. You have to be objective, and objective means trying to take yourself out of it as much as possible, or at least your personality out of it as much as possible.
把这些标签都放下吧。更好的做法是看眼前的问题，照真实样貌看待现实，试着在某种程度上把自己抽离出去。当然，你还是参与其中，但带有强烈动机的推理是最糟糕的推理方式。你不可能透过这种方式找到真理，你必须保持客观，而客观意味着尽量将自己，至少是你的性格，从推理过程中抽离。
To the extent you run with this thick identity and personality, it's going to cloud your judgment. It's going to try and lock you into the past. If you say I'm a depressed person, yeah, you're going to be unhappy. That's a way of locking yourself into your past. Even saying I have trauma, I have PTSD, yeah, you feel something. There are memories, there are flashes, there are occasional bad feelings. But don't define yourself by it, because then you'll lock it into your identity and just go into loop on it.
如果你过度依附于某种身份或性格，它会模糊你的判断，把你锁进过去。如果你说我是个忧郁的人，那你确实会不快乐，这就是把自己锁在过去。即便说我有创伤，我有 PTSD， 是的，你会感受到一些东西，有记忆，有闪回，有不好的感觉，但不要用这来定义自己，否则它就会成为你身份的一部分，你只会在其中不断打转。
It's better to stay flexible because reality is always changing and you have to be able to adapt to it. Adaptation is also intelligence. Adaptation is survival. Adaptation is kind of how you're here. You're here because you're an adapter and your ancestors were adapters. So to adapt, you'll see things clearly, and if you're seeing them through your own identity, it's going to cloud your judgment.
保持灵活更好，因为现实总是在变，你必须适应它。适应本身就是智慧，也是生存之道。适应是你能活在这里的原因。你之所以存在，是因为你和你的祖先都是适应者。若能适应，你会看得更清楚；若是透过身份去看，判断就会被蒙蔽。
Defining happiness.
定义幸福。
Moving on to sort of thinking about happiness. Obviously, a topic of yours. It's honestly the one that I feel least qualified to talk about. Is it like a guy that's got long arms teaching you how to bench press? Or a dude that's really tall teaching you how to deadlift? Someone that feels like they came from behind the 8 ball?
接下来谈谈幸福，这显然是你的专长。老实说，这是我最不觉得自己有资格谈的话题。这就像一个天生臂长的人教你怎么练卧推，或一个天生高个子教你怎么练硬举。这样的人本来就占了先天优势。
Yeah, it's you're asking a crazy person about their thoughts. So I just thought it through.
是啊，你是在问一个疯子对幸福的看法，所以我也只是把它想清楚一点。
Is happiness still more about peace than it is about joy?
幸福更多是关于平静，而不是快乐吗？
It's just one of those overloaded words that means different things to different people, so I'm not even sure we're communicating the same language. But what is happiness? I think it's just basically being okay with where you are, not wanting.
幸福这个词被过度使用了，对不同人意味着不同东西，所以我甚至不确定我们是不是在用同一种语言交流。但对我来说，幸福基本上就是对当下所处的状态感到满意，不再渴求其他东西。
The nature of happiness.
幸福的本质，
Not wanting things to be different than the way they are. Not having the sense that anything is missing in this moment. Needing something to change your current positive situation being contingent on an adjustment. I'm getting something from the outside world. Ironically, I think most people, if you were to ask them when they were happiest for a sustained period of time, not for a brief moment, because pleasure can override happiness and create kind of this illusion of happiness.
不希望事情与现状不同，不觉得此刻缺少什么，也不需要任何外部的改变来支撑幸福。具有讽刺意味的是，如果你问大多数人什么时候最长时间感到幸福，答案往往不是某个短暂的快乐时刻，因为快乐可能掩盖甚至制造出一种幸福的假象。
But if you ask people when they were happy for a sustained period of time, they were probably doing some variation of nothing.
但如果你问人们什么时候长时间感到幸福，他们大概都是在做某种变化版的无所事事。
That's interesting, because in the chase is this sort of lack, this contingency. But then you get bored. If you just sit around all the time, you get bored, so you want adventure. You want surprise, like there's the funny thought experiment of the Bliss machine, which is suppose I could drill a hole in your head and put electrode in. And they did this with monkeys, and I can put a wire in there, and I can stimulate just the right part of your brain, and I can put you in bliss, and you would just be in bliss. Would you want that?
这很有趣，因为追逐中存在一种匮乏感与依附性，但随后你又会感到无聊。如果你一直闲坐，你会无聊，所以你想要冒险，想要惊喜。比如那个极乐机器的思想实验，假设我能在你脑袋钻个洞，放进电极，像对猴子做的实验一样，刺激你大脑的特定区域，让你进入极乐状态，你会愿意那样吗？
Might be nice. For how long?
也许挺好，但能持续多久呢？
Do it and I'll tell you.
试了我就告诉你。
Right, so most people will say, well, I don't want that. I want meaning. I don't want just bliss, want meaning. And you're like, okay, well, I'll put an electrode in there and I'll give you meaning, how about that? And if you kind of run this thought experiment long enough, I think most people realize, actually, what I want is I want surprise. I want the world to surprise me, and I want to wrestle with it in ways that are somewhat predictable but somewhat not. And you kind of end up back where you started.
没错，大多数人会说，我不想要那样，我要的是意义，而不只是极乐。那么如果我说我给你植入一根电线，让你产生意义感，你会接受吗？如果你把这个思想实验推演得够久，你会发现大多数人真正想要的其实是惊喜，他们希望世界能带来惊喜， 希望能在某种程度可预测又不可预测的方式下与世界决裂，最后你还是会回到起点。
So, I don't know if necessarily, for some people, pure happiness is the ultimate goal. They want to, just be blissfully happy wherever they are, whenever they are. But I think other people, most people would say, well, I'm here in this world, I'm here in this life. I don't understand it or why, but I want to be engaged, I want to be surprised, I want to do things, I want to accomplish things, I want to want things and then get them, right? That's kind of the whole game that we're all playing here.
所以，我不确定对某些人来说，纯粹的幸福是不是最终目标。他们可能只想在任何时候、任何地方都快乐。但我认为大多数人会说，我既然来到这个世界，活在这个人生里，即便我不明白为什么，但我想要投入，想要惊喜，想要去做事，想要完成一些东西，想要渴望东西，然后得到它们，对吧？这就是我们大家在玩的游戏。
The value of surprise.
惊喜的价值。
Surprise is a really interesting, the sort of unpredictability. I think total bro science here, but I'm pretty sure that that's kind of how dopamine works. That things are a bit better than you expected. That within that it means that if you for the perennial insecure overachievers that cloy for control, that really want to be able to the schedule is perfectly done and we know the itinerary, we know where we're going to be at this time, you're, in some ways, I guess, reducing down the capacity for surprise because everything has become very contrived, prescribed, done in advance, laid out.
惊喜其实非常有趣，这种不可预测性虽然听起来有点像兄弟科学 bro science， 但我很确定这就是多巴胺的运作方式。事情比你预期的稍微好一点时，你会感到快乐，但这也意味着，如果你是那种总感到不安全的过度成就者，总是渴望掌控一切，想把日程安排得完美无缺，知道自己在什么时间会在哪里，那么在某种程度上，你其实削弱了被惊喜的能力，因为一切都变得过于设计、预设、事先安排好了。
Your ability to be surprised actually diminishes.
你被惊喜到的能力其实会逐渐消失。
Yeah, if nothing worked out the way you expected, if it was all serendipity, and you didn't want that, you would just be a ball of anxiety. On the other hand, if everything worked out as you expected and wanted, you'd be so bored you might as well be dead. So there's some, the river of life kind of flows between these two banks and enjoy it.
是的，如果一切都不如预期，全部都靠偶然，你会变成焦虑的一团；但如果一切都完全按照你预期和想要的进行，你又会无聊到仿佛死去。所以人生的河流其实在这两岸之间流淌，你应该学会享受它。
Self-reflection and unhappiness.
自我反思与不幸福。
You say thinking about yourself is the source of all unhappiness, but presumably you need to work on yourself and your weaknesses as well. So some degree of reflection is important, and if thinking about yourself as a source of unhappiness, is this a price that you need to pay? I need to sort of reflect inward. I'm going to have to diminish this level of happiness for a little while, and then I can use this new level. I've got my brown belt on and I can go out into the world as a brown belt.
你说思考自己是所有不幸福的根源，但同时你也必须改善自己，改进缺点，所以某种程度的反思还是很重要的。如果思考自己会带来不幸福，那是不是一种必须付出的代价？我需要向内反思，可能暂时牺牲一些幸福感，但之后能带着这个新的水准走向世界，就像从白带升级到棕带。
What I'm specifically referring to that is, if you're thinking about your personality and your ego and the character of you, and you're obsessing over that, that's where a lot of depression and unhappiness sort of lingers and gets cultivated. So thinking about woe is me, this happened to me, that happened to me, I have this personality, I have this issue, I deserve this, I didn't get that. That's you're just strengthening a little beast in there that is insatiable. And that's where I think a lot of unhappiness comes from.
我特别指的是，当你不断思考自己的性格、自我、人格，并执着于此时，许多忧郁与不幸福就会在那里滋生。比如，我好可怜，这事发生在我身上， 那事也发生在我身上，我有这种性格，我有这些问题，我应该得到这个却没得到那个，这些只是在滋养你心里那只永不满足的小野兽，而这正是很多不幸福的来源。
What's the beast?
那只野兽是什么？
It's the ego, but that word is so overused that I kind of hate to use the word. But it's like a recurring collection of thoughts that are very self-obsessed and will never be satisfied, and very concretized as well, so they're not malleable, not particularly flexible, but you're just adding to them by thinking about them all the time. You're creating narratives and stories and identities. But that's different from solving personal problems.
它就是自我，但这个词被过度使用了。我其实不太喜欢用，但它更像是一堆反复出现的自我迷恋的想法，永远不会满足，而且非常僵化、不灵活。当你不断思考它们时，你只是在不断增强它们，创造出叙事、故事和身份，但这与解决实际问题完全不同。
So if you encounter something, you learn from something. You're reflecting upon the learning. Then you can reflect upon it, absorb it and then just move on. But sitting there saying I'm Chris, I'm Naval, I deserve this, this happened to me, that person wronged me, this is who I am, this shouldn't have happened, I need to go get revenge on this, I need to fix that or change this. I mean that I think is where a lot of mental illness is from.
所以，如果你遇到某件事并从中学习，你反思并吸收，然后继续前行，那是正确的。但如果你只是坐在那里说我是 Chris， 我是 Naval， 我应该得到这个，那人伤害了我，这就是我，我不该遇到这事，我要报复、修复或改变什么，这才是我认为许多心理疾病的根源。
So it depends if you are thinking about something to solve a problem and get it off your chest, and get it off your mind. If it leaves your mind clearer at the end of it, then I think it was worthwhile. If it leaves your mind busier at the end of it, then you're probably going in wrong.
所以关键在于，你思考某件事是为了解决问题，把它从心里移除。如果在结束后你的心灵更清晰，那就值得。但如果更混乱，那大概就是走错了路。
Is this a justification for detachment, cultivated ignorance, distraction?
这是不是在为冷漠、刻意无知或分心辩护？
Detachment is not a goal, detachment is a byproduct. It's just a byproduct of just realizing, you know, what matters and what doesn't. And just for one moment on the self thing, I think everybody craves thinking about something more than themselves.
冷漠不是目标，而是副产品。它只是当你明白什么重要，什么不重要之后自然产生的副产品。而且关于自我，我认为每个人都渴望有比自己更大的东西去思考。
If you want to be happy to some extent, you have to forget about your personal problems, and one way to do that is take on other problems, bigger problems, and that could be a mission, that could be spirituality, that could be kids, it could be caring about the planet. Although I think people take that a little far, and then they get kind of oppressive and tyrannical and supportive abstract concepts. But so these can be taken too far, just like religion, for example, just like anything in excess.
如果你想要幸福，某种程度上你必须忘掉个人问题。方法之一就是承担更大的问题，一个使命，一种灵性、孩子，或是对地球的关怀。当然，有些人会走得太远，变得压迫、专制、执着于抽象概念。但就像宗教一样，任何东西过度了都会失衡。
Yeah, anything in excess, right?
是啊，凡事过度都不好，对吧？
But generally, the less you think about yourself, the more you can think about a mission, or about God, or about a child, or something like that.
但总体来说，你越少思考自己，就能越多思考使命、神、孩子或类似的东西。
So, I remember Vinnie Himeth, the founder of Loom, said, I am rich, and I have no idea to do what to do with my life. And you replied, God, kids, on mission, pick at least one.
我记得 Loom 的创办人 Vinnie Himeth 曾说，我很有钱，但我完全不知道自己的人生要做什么。而你回复，上帝、孩子、使命，至少选一个。
That's right, preferably all three. It's very liberating.
没错，最好3个都有，这会非常解放。
Overthinking and depression.
过度思考与忧郁。
I think overthinking about yourself is probably deep may not be the cause of depression, but it certainly doesn't help.
我认为过度思考自己可能不是忧郁的根源，但它绝对不会有帮助。Rumination 反刍思考。
Yeah, I kind of had a self-induced Stockholm syndrome from this sort of a thing. Because I like to think about stuff, and you provide yourself with an endless number of things to think about.
是的，我因为这种习惯有点像自我制造的斯德哥尔摩症候群，因为我喜欢思考，而这会让我给自己无止境的东西去想。
So you're kind of the prisoner and the prison guard at the same time.
所以你同时是囚犯，也是狱卒。
And I had Abigail Schreier on the show. She wrote this book called Bad Therapy, sort of pushing back against therapy culture for kids, specifically for kids. But there was a blast radius that covered pretty much everything, including kind of CBT. And I'm like, we're getting perilously close to some really evidence-based stuff here. But the more that I've thought about it, and the more that I've looked at the evidence, there is like basically a direct correlation between how much you think about yourself, and how miserable you are.
我曾邀请 Abigail Schreier 上节目，她写了一本书《Bad Therapy》，是对儿童心理治疗文化的反思。虽然主要针对孩子，但波及范围几乎涵盖所有东西，包括认知行为治疗 CBT。当时我觉得我们正在危险地接近一些基于证据的事实。你越多思考自己，你就越痛苦，几乎存在直接的相关性。
Therapy is great if it lets you vent, and it solves the thing. And then a session later you're done, you're clear. But if you're just looping on the same thing forever, then it's actually the opposite. You're bathing in it.
治疗很好，如果它能让你倾诉并解决问题，让你在一次会谈后感到轻松，那是有效的。但如果你只是无止境地反复纠结同一件事，那就完全相反，你其实是在浸泡其中。
You're indulging in it. Yeah. How have your become happy techniques developed over time?
你是在沉溺其中，没错。那么，你的变得幸福的方法随着时间如何演变？
Happiness without techniques.
没有技巧的幸福。
Yeah, I used to have a lot of them. Now I kind of try not to have any because I think the techniques themselves are kind of a struggle. It's sort of like bidding for status implies your low status. It reveals that you're low status. So someone who's basically trying to show off comes across as low status. The same way someone who's trying to be happy is sort of saying I'm unhappy and creating that frame. So it's better just to not even think in terms of happiness.
是啊，我以前有很多方法，现在我试着什么方法都不用，因为我认为技巧本身就是一种挣扎，就像争取地位，其实暗示你处于地位，炫耀反而显得低级。同样，努力去追求幸福其实是在说我不幸福，并制造这样的框架，所以最好连幸福这个概念都不要去想。
Position yourself as being in lack in order to attain.
把自己置于匮乏的状态，好去追求。
Yeah, I don't even think in terms of happiness, unhappiness anymore. I just kind of just do my thing.
没错，我甚至不再从幸福或不幸福的角度去想，我只是专注于做自己的事。
Again, another question that's similar to a bunch of them. Do you think you could have got there had you have not done the procedural systematic sort of step by step? This is what it is. And then come out the other side?
再问一个类似的问题，你觉得如果没有那种程式化、系统化、循序渐进的一步步过程，你能走到今天这一步吗？
I don't think there are any formulas. I think it's unique to each person. It's like asking a successful person, how did you become successful? Each one of them will give you a different story. You can't follow anyone else's path. And most of them are even probably telling you some narratized version of it that isn't quite true.
我认为没有任何公式，每个人都是独一无二的。就像问一个成功人士，你是怎么成功的？每个人都会给你一个不同的故事，你无法照搬别人的道路，而且大部分人讲的故事可能还是经过叙事加工，并不完全真实。
I mean, that's something that I continually realize, especially as I get to spend more time around people that are successful. And you hear it's very important to prioritize work-life balance, right? That's one of the most common things that people who have attained success say.
这是我不断意识到的，尤其是当我花更多时间与成功人士相处时，你经常会听到他们说工作与生活平衡很重要，这几乎是成功人士最常挂在嘴边的话之一。
The path to success.
通往成功之路。
That's not my experience. If you look at, you shouldn't be asking somebody who is successful what they do to continue their success now. You should be asking them what did they do to attain their success when they are where you were.
这不是我的经验。如果你去看成功人士，你不应该问他们现在是如何维持成功的，你应该问他们当年处在你的位置时是怎么获得成功的。
And the people who are really extraordinarily successful didn't sit around watching success porn. They just went and did it. They had such an overwhelming desire to be successful at the thing that they were doing that they just went and did that thing. They didn't have time to study and learn and listen, and they just did it. It's the overwhelming desire that's the most important, and the focus that comes from that.
那些真正非凡成功的人，不会闲坐着看成功学影片，他们就是直接去做。他们对自己正在做的事情有着压倒性的渴望，迫切想要成功，因此他们立刻投入其中，根本没有时间去研究、去学习或听取建议。他们只是去做。最重要的是这股压倒性的渴望，以及由此带来的专注。
It's a tweet of yours that was, "People who are good at making wealth, or people who are good at attaining wealth don't need to teach anybody else how to do it."
你曾发过一句推文，那些擅长创造财富的人，不需要去教别人怎么做。
Yeah. You don't need mentors, you need action. That was one of them. Another one is, the people who actually know how to make money don't need to sell you a course on it.
没错，你不需要导师，你需要的是行动。真正懂得怎么赚钱的人，不需要靠卖课程来教你怎么做。
There it is. Yeah. There's lots of variations on it. But if you don't, another one, if you don't lie awake at night thinking about it, you don't want it badly enough.
就是这样，对，这种话有很多变化形式。另一个版本是，如果你晚上没有因为想这件事而辗转难眠，那你就还不够渴望它。
Sleep and priorities.
睡眠与优先事项。
Yeah, I think I've heard you talk before about how sort of unclosed loops problems that you're working on can cause you to be sleepless, and this. I'm not a good sleeper.
是的，我听你以前提到过，当一些未解决的问题不断在脑中循环时，会导致失眠，而我本身就不是一个睡眠很好的人。
Tell me about that.
跟我谈谈这个吧。
Oh, I mean, my 8 sleep hates me. It's always hard to me. I failed at sleeping again. Brian Johnson thinks I'm going to die early. He's probably right.
我的 8 Sleep 睡眠监测设备简直恨透我了。它总是显示我睡不好，我又一次睡眠失败了。Brian Johnson 认为我会早死，他大概是对的。
How much do you reckon you sleep at night? Do you have any idea?
你觉得你晚上大概能睡多少小时？
Oh, it's so random. Some nights I'll sleep 8 hours. Some nights I'll sleep 4 hours. But it's literally just random.
完全随机。有些晚上我能睡8小时，有些晚上只有4小时，完全没有规律。
Are you bothered about that? Are you trying to optimize? Are a sleep coach teaching you how to?
这会困扰你吗？你有试着去优化吗？或者请睡眠教练指导。
I don't flog myself over things. If I want to sleep, I'll sleep. If I don't want to sleep, don't sleep. It's not I don't think I'm doing anything right or wrong.
我不会为这些事苛责自己。如果我想睡就睡，不想睡就不睡。我不觉得这里面有对错之分。
You don't label it good night, bad night.
你不会把它标签成好的一夜或糟糕的一夜吗？
No. I work out every day because I think it gives me more energy, and I've gotten into a good habit with it. Maybe I'll do the same thing with sleep. Maybe I'll develop a good habit. But I'm not going to beat myself up over it. There'll come a point where it's important to me, and when it's important to me, I'll just do it.
不会，我每天运动，因为这让我更有精力。这已经成为一种好习惯。或许有一天我也会把睡眠当作同样的习惯，但我不会因此责备自己。等到有一天睡眠对我变得很重要，那时我就会自然去做。
Most of, like for example, you look at people with addictions, right? overeating or smoking or whatever, they can kind of go through all the different methods. But it's half-hearted, and then one day they're like, oh shit, I've got lung cancer, my dad has lung cancer, they drop it immediately. So I think a lot of change is more about desire and understanding than it is about forcing yourself or trying to domesticate yourself.
你知道吗？比如那些有成瘾的人暴饮暴食、抽烟等等，他们可能尝试过各种方法，但大多都是半吊子，直到某一天，他们突然意识到糟了，我得了肺癌，或我父亲得了肺癌，他们才会立刻戒掉。所以我觉得很多改变其实更多源于渴望与理解，而不是逼迫自己或驯化自己。
It's efficiency again, I guess. You know, aligning the thing that you want to do with the way that you feel about what it is that you want to do.
这又回到效率问题。我认为，真正的效率是把你想做的事与你对它的感受对齐。
Yeah, it's not getting caught up in a half desire or mimetic desire. It's really just being aware of what it is that you actually want at this point in time, and when you want something, then you will act on it with maximal capability.
没错，不要被半心半意的欲望或模仿的欲望困住，而是要真正清楚自己在当下到底想要什么。当你真的想要时，你会以最大能力去实现它。MHMM，耳哼，耳哼。
And that's the time to act on it. In the meantime, just doing it because other people tell you you should do it or society tells you you should do it or you feel slightly guilty about it. These are half-hearted efforts, and half-hearted efforts don't get you there.
那才是你该行动的时候。相反，如果只是因为别人告诉你该做，社会告诉你该做，或者你带着一点点内疚去做，这些半吊子的努力是没办法真正成功的。
As you get older, one thing that becomes harder to ignore is your testosterone levels.
随着年龄增长，有一件事会变得难以忽视：高固酮水平。
Dealing with anxiety and stress.
处理焦虑与压力。
You mentioned anxiety before. Imagine how effective you'd be if you weren't anxious all the time is one of yours, and anxiety is the emotion du jour of the 21st century. Lots of driven people are very anxious, very paranoid. That's what's caused them to be effective. It pays to be so attentive, detail-oriented, not letting things go, staying up at night thinking about it. That's the paranoia coming in. What have you come to learn about anxiety and dealing with it?
你之前提到过焦虑，你说过一句话，想象一下，如果你不是一直焦虑，你会有多高效？焦虑是21世纪最常见的情绪，许多有动力的人都非常焦虑，非常多疑，这正是让他们高效的原因。过度关注，过度细节导向，不放过任何事情，甚至熬夜思考，这就是偏执带来的副作用。你对焦虑以及应对它有什么认识？
Anxiety and stress are interesting. They're very related. Stress is when your mind is being pulled in two different directions at the same time. If you look at an iron beam, when it's under stress, it's because it's being bent in two different directions. When your mind is under stress, it's because it has two conflicting desires at once.
焦虑和压力很有趣，它们高度相关。压力是当你的大脑同时被拉向两个不同方向，就像一根钢梁承受压力时，是因为被往两边同时拉扯。当你的大脑承受压力时，就是因为你同时有两个冲突的欲望。
For example, you want to be liked but you also want to do something selfish, and you can't reconcile the two, so you're under stress. You want to do something for somebody else, but you want to do something for yourself. You don't want to go to work, but you want to make money, so you're under stress.
比如，你想被喜欢，但同时也想做些自私的事，无法调和，于是你承受压力。你想帮助别人，但也想为自己做点事。你不想去工作，但又想赚钱，这就是压力。
One of the ways to get through stress is to acknowledge that you actually have two conflicting desires and either resolve it, pick one and be okay losing the other, or decide later. But at least just being aware of why you're stressed can help alleviate a lot of stress.
处理压力的方法之一，就是承认你确实有两个冲突的欲望，然后要么解决它，要么选择其中一个并接受失去另一个，要么暂时推迟决定，但至少要意识到自己为什么有压力，这本身就能缓解很多压力。
Anxiety, I think, is sort of this pervasive unidentifiable stress where you're just stressed out all the time and you're not even sure why. You can't even identify the underlying problem. The reason for that is because you have so many unresolved problems, unresolved stress points that have piled up in your life that you can no longer identify what the problems are. There's this mountain of garbage in your mind with a little bit of it poking out the top like an iceberg. That's anxiety, but underneath there's a lot of unresolved things.
我认为焦虑是一种无处不在却难以辨识的压力，你总是紧绷，但却说不出原因，因为生活里累积了太多未解决的问题、未处理的压力点，久而久之，你甚至分不清问题本身是什么，就像脑中有一座垃圾山，露出水面的一小部分是焦虑，而水下还有一大堆未解决的东西。
You need to go through very carefully every time you're anxious and ask, why am I anxious this time? If you don't know why, sit and think about it. Write down what the possible causes could be, meditate on it, journal, talk to a therapist, talk to friends, see when that stress goes away. If you can identify, unravel, and resolve these issues, then I think that helps get rid of anxiety.
每当你焦虑时，你需要仔细检视，问自己，这次我为什么焦虑？如果不知道，就静下来思考，把可能的原因写下来，冥想，写日记，跟治疗师谈，和朋友聊，看看什么时候压力会消退。如果你能辨识、拆解并解决这些问题，我认为这能帮助去除焦虑。
A lot of anxiety is piled up because we move through life too quickly, not observing our own reactions to things. We don't resolve them. This goes counter to what I was saying earlier about not reflecting too much on things. But you reflect on the problems to observe them and solve them. You don't reflect on them to feel better about yourself.
很多焦虑的累积，是因为我们生活节奏太快，没有去观察自己对事情的反应，于是问题没有被解决。这与我之前说的不要过度反思似乎相反，但区别在于，你要反思问题，是为了观察并解决，而不是单纯为了让自己感觉好一点。
To indulge them.
去沉溺其中。
Well, if you're doing it just to feel better about yourself, that could be strengthening your personality and your ego, and could be creating a more fragile personality.
如果你只是为了让自己舒服而去反思，那可能会强化你的自我与性格，反而让人格更脆弱。
One big anxiety resolver for me is ruminating on death. I think that's a good one. You're going to die. It's all going to zero. You cannot take anything with you. I know this is trite, and I know we don't spend enough time thinking about the big questions. We kind of give up on them when we're very young.
对我来说，一个重要的解除焦虑的方法就是思考死亡。我觉得这非常有效。你终将死亡，一切最终归零，你什么也带不走。我知道这话老套，但我们其实没有花足够时间去思考这些重大问题，我们往往在年轻时就放弃思考它们了。
A little child might ask the big questions like, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? What is this all about? Is there Santa Claus? Is there God? But then as adults, we're taught not to think about these things. We've given up on them. But I think the big questions are the big questions for good reasons, and if you can keep the idea in front of you at all times that you're going to die and that everything goes literally to zero, what's the distress about?
小孩子会问那些大问题，我们为什么在这里？生命的意义是什么？这一切是怎么回事？圣诞老人存在吗？上帝存在吗？但等我们长大后，社会会教我们不要去想这些，我们放弃了。但我认为这些问题之所以是大问题，是有充分理由的。如果你能一直提醒自己你会死去，一切最终归零，那么还有什么好焦虑的呢？
The brevity of life.
生命地短暂。
For better or worse, life is very short. How should people deal with its briefness?
无论好坏，人生都非常短暂，人们该如何面对它的短暂？
Enjoy it. Make the best of it. You know, it's even briefer than that. Each moment just disappears. It's gone. There's only a present moment, and it's gone instantly.
享受它，充分利用它。事实上，它比我们想的还短暂，每个当下都会消失，瞬间即逝。真正存在的只有此刻，而它也马上就会消失。
So if you're not there for it, if you're stressed out, or you're anxious, or you're thinking about something else, you missed it. Any moment when you're not in that moment, you are dead to that moment. You might as well be dead because your mind is off doing something else or living in some imagined reality that is just a very poor substitute for the actual reality.
所以，如果你没有活在当下，如果你因为压力、焦虑或心思飘到别处，那你就错过了任何时刻。只要你不在场，你对那一刻来说就等于死了，因为你的心思在做别的事，或者活在虚构的现实里，那只是对真实的拙劣替代。
One of my recent realizations was, what is wasted time? What is the waste of time? I don't like to waste time, but what is wasted time? Everything is wasted time in a sense because nothing matters in the ultimate. But in each moment the thing matters. In each moment, what's happening in front of you literally has all the meaning in the world, and so what matters is just being present for the thing.
我最近的一个领悟是，什么是浪费时间？我不喜欢浪费时间，但浪费时间到底是什么？从最终角度来看，一切都是浪费，因为没有什么是真正重要的。但在当下，每一刻正在发生的事情却有着世界上所有的意义。所以重要的是，你是否活在当下。
If you're doing something that you want to do and you're fully there for it, there's not wasted time. If you don't want to do it and your mind is running away from it, and you're reacting against it, and you're wishing you were somewhere else, and you're thinking about some other thing, or you're anticipating some future thing or regretting some past thing or being fearful of something, then that's wasted time.
如果你在做自己想做的事，而且全心投入，那就不是浪费时间。但如果你不想做，心思却逃离当下，抗拒现实，渴望别处，思考别的事，期待未来，懊悔过去或恐惧某事，那才是浪费时间。
That's time that's being wasted when you're not actually present for the reality in front of you. So my definition of wasted time, yes, I do want some material things in life, and there are things that have more value than others within this life. But this life is very short and bounded. The true waste of time is time that you are not present for, when you are not there for it, when you are not doing the thing you want to do to the best of your capability such that you're immersed in it.
当你没有真正出现在眼前的现实里，那就是浪费时间。所以我对浪费时间的定义是：是的，我在生活中也想要一些物质的东西，而且确实有些比其他更有价值，但人生很短暂也有限制。真正浪费的时间，是你没有在场，没有去做自己真正想做的事，没有尽最大能力沉浸其中的时候。
If you're not immersed in this moment, then you're wasting your time.
如果你没有沉浸在当下，那你就在浪费时间。
People get worried about dying and no longer being here, but they don't realize that so much of their life is spent not being here in any case.
人们总是担心死亡与消失，但他们没意识到，自己的人生大部分时候其实早已不在场。
That's right, but I think people crave being here for it, and when you're here for it, you're actually not thinking about yourself. You are more immersed in the thing, the moment, the task at hand.
没错，但我认为人们渴望在场。当你真的在场时，你其实不会去想自己，而是沉浸在当下的事情、当下的时刻、眼前的任务里。
We don't want peace of mind, we want peace from our mind.
我们追求的不是心灵的平静，而是从心灵中解脱。
That's right. The mind is what kills each you alive if you let it, and there's more to you than the mind.
没错，如果你任由心智掌控，它会在你活着的时候一点点杀死你，但你比你的心智更广阔。